with some 220 and get this show on the road. Okay, so basswood also sands very easily. This is a very smooth surface. And how far you go when you're sanding, we're using 220 right now, but how far you go when you're sanding can vary on how you're going to finish your guitar. For instance, we're going to finish this with a lacquer, so lacquer will build quickly. So this is sanding nicely. We're going to go to the back real quick and hit the back. This is a nice body. When I said earlier it's going to take more work than the other two, and what I mean by that is there was a bit more blemishes or dings in this wood, probably from, just being built and moved around. Nothing horrible, nothing that's going to require any filler or anything like that. So the body is actually very good. Base woods have that because they're more susceptible to damage because they're a softer wood. Okay, so we've gone as far as we can go with our sander doing that method. And then we come back through, and anything that we need to fine tune, we just take a little bit. Like this, for instance, this needs a little fine tuning in here where the monkey grip is. We can get that by hand. I don't recommend you do this with a orbital sander. I'm using a mouse sander, and it takes a very light touch, by the way, because you can take off too much material here and make a huge mistake in the wood. Make a huge flaw if you're not careful. So what we're looking for is nice, crisp but not over crisp lines, and a nice smooth flow of the contours without taking away the sharpness that a gem is supposed to have. So I'm going to get my finger grooves here. Basswood sands quickly, very quickly, just so you know. You can overdo it rather quick. Now, where we sand it up in here, we'll have a sharp edge because we used a mouse sander, and what we do is take my hand quickly. This will roll over the edge, literally that fast. Doesn't take nothing at all. And I'll do it even more once we get into our finer grit paper. But so far, so good. I am going to just give these holes a once around. And once again, this is 220. I don't suggest you go any more aggressive than 220. Check it out thoroughly. Make sure your contours are correct. And I'm just going to rip off a piece of 400 grit. And you can go over the whole body. You can give it a once over. I'm just basically, it's the smoothing in of the areas that curve is what I'm doing. But such as the monkey grip, very fast. Once again, sands incredibly quick. Inside the monkey grip, and that's it. It's smoother already. Okay. Now we're going to take our mineral spirits and give it a wipe down. And this is going to show, this will transform color instantly and show how any imperfections. Now, as you notice, it doesn't get deep like it does on the mahogany. The mahogany will just darken up instantly, which is a very beautiful effect. This stays more true to form. Okay, so there's our body. And let's get to our stain. Maybe you guys have used this before. This is going to be black. We're going with a black on this. This is supposed to be a polyurethane and stain in one, so it's gonna, that's what I wanted. It's gonna seal as well as stain. So we don't want to do this in too many layers. We want to get it in, keep it soaking in, get it, and maybe build it up a little bit. I don't know. And we're gonna start applying this black stain to this guitar. All right, let's let her sit and dry. And while that dries, now we're going to start on the neck. The necks, if they're good necks, they're usually fast and easy to do. Same thing, we're using the same paper. We're going to start with some 220, avoiding up here where it attaches to the body because I don't want to take away any material on this neck especially. I just don't want to because it fits in about like it's supposed to. We don't want to take away. And that's all I do with the mouse sander. And I come back through with 400. Now right now, I always start with the headstock because that's going to be a very, of course it's all important, but it's an important piece to me because that's where the logos go. So, and once again, even with the maple, it sands very quickly. We want a very smooth surface with, and they really do a good job on these. Just such minimal work required. Okay, now let's move to the neck itself, which is already pretty decent. I'm gonna knock that down with 220 by hand real quick. Lightly up into the edge of the fretboard, the very edge where it meets. Okay, now what I'm going to do is just hit up into the side of the fretboard with 400. And remember when I said there might be some fretwork that needs to be done? I mean, if you feel any rough edges on the frets, this is going to tell you really quickly when you run this over. And honestly, there's really not much there, so. Very nice. Okay, now we're going to progress up a little bit on this one, and we're going to go to a 2500 right here. The 2500s to get right on that fretboard, make it nice and polished and usable. Catching 0 frets, by the way. This will be the test. You don't catch any frets, you know you did good. Very nice. Same thing on the other side. You know, one thing these kits all had in common, these Jem kits, they had very nice fret work. Something that you usually don't see. Do the hand test, make sure it's smooth. Absolutely stunning. Okay, for those of you, and like I said, I do not use, now that this is clean, and this is very clean and smooth surface, I do not use any mineral spirits on this because the mineral spirits, for some reason that I use, the odorless, has a tendency to make things not stick. So, we have our logo. This is going to be a black logo anyhow, so black on black probably wouldn't work out too well. But what I want to do is make sure that this is on the transfer paper good and well, which probably is. And I've laid the, I'm not gonna, you guys can watch the other video if you really want to see how to lay these, or just stick around and watch this. I'm so used to doing these now. I get these online on eBay from a seller, Firehouse, I believe they're called. And I've already checked to make sure that this is going to line up correctly. So the end goes right to the tip. And then this one towards the second tuner, and if you got those in the right spacing, the other one will just fall right in place. Right there. It's that simple, easy peasy. Rub it on there. And you have a washer that goes here, so you want to make sure the washer doesn't touch the end of that. So just move it back to about where the washer doesn't. So this paint points towards this edge, this points towards the second tuner from the bottom, and this goes right to the very tip. And that's how Ibanez does it, and that's how we're doing it. And we just press it on. And I use some heat afterwards, let it sit in, sink into the... Now, if these ever lift on you when you're putting lacquer over them, if they start to lift, stop lacquering. Let the lacquer dry. The lacquer usually will draw it right back down as it dries, and then you can continue lacquering after the lacquer's cured 100%. So, we should be able to, clean surface, dry, freshly sanded, peel this right off just like it was laying on glass. And that's exactly what happened. Now I'm going to put this next to a heat source. Hope you guys can see that. I'm going to put that next to a heat source real quick. Okay, so when I decided that we're just going to lacquer the front, we're going to keep it wood. I'm not gonna stain the front of this. It's just too pretty. The maple's too nice. Make sure before you lacquer this that you totally tape off your neck. You don't want to get lacquer on anything, especially on a fretboard that you're just going to have to pull everything off again. So the fretboard has been sanded. The frets are outstanding on this. They were just polished. The last thing we do to this neck is condition the fretboard. Here is the logo that went on very nice. And I do this a little bit differently. When I tape off for my lacquer, I actually tape a little bit down from the end so we don't have a sudden sharp edge, and I kind of just work it so it kind of rolls in, and then I can, if I need to, and a lot of times you don't even need to, but if I need to, then I can sand the edges lightly after the lacquer is cured, which is usually about 1 week for a full cure, just so you know. I still have not buffed out the first two, this Jem, or for the Leo James or the BYO. So, and they look outstanding. A lot of lacquer on those ones. These ones we're not going to do as much lacquer because the decal on this one is a bit thinner, and we're not going to need to bury it like we did the other ones. So far so good. Let's get to lacquering this, and I'm still waiting for the body to dry, and we're probably going to put another coat on that body before we lacquer that. Stay right there and I'll be right back. So here we are. We have the Watco crystal clear lacquer. I'm partial to this stuff. It works well. It doesn't have a tendency to clog like a lot of other lacquers. And if I can give you some hints, when you're spraying your headstock, you see how your neck, you'd lay it down, it wouldn't be flat. Make sure you get this at an angle when you set this down, where this lacquer will cure flat. You'll get a lot better appearance, and you don't have the risk of sags or runs like you do if it wasn't running. So this has been shaken up, and actually I put this on heat. I start heating this up a few days actually warm, not hot. A few days before we're going to use it. I'll always give it a test spray, and we're going to hold this at an angle just like this. Hopefully get you the camera so you can see here. And I'm going to spray it just like this. And that is it for now. And then I'm going to tip this upside down, give it a spray out, so it stops spraying. You don't want it to clog. Put this back on your heat, let this dry for this particular first coat, and you might see some bubbles in it. You might go, oh no, that's fisheye in. Just let it settle. It'll suck into itself. Just keep it flat. Already it's looking amazing. So I'm thinking one more coat and we're going to be done with this one. So I'll sit it on heat, come back about an hour, and I think we'll be good for another. Okay, so I just pulled the guitar body off the rack, and I was debating on another coat, and I'll be honest with you, I'm really liking the finish. I don't think the camera's going to pick it up right, but it has some very, very unique features. I was going to go darker, but I think it's going to, as you can see, it's lighter on this side, darker on this side. Very unique features on this wood that I think I'm going to roll with and kind of highlight. We're going to lacquer this and kind of be done with it. I'm just going to give it a wipe down. Okay, so we're going to lay our first light coat of lacquer, tack coat. Very important that, well, to me it's very important that we do a tack coat first. And I'm going to start the way I did on the other guitar and get slightly in the horn section first. And the monkey grip, I like to do my edges first. Okay, now we start laying it on the top. Oh yes. That is stunning. Now, if you have any debris, and if you catch anything in this first coat, the tack coat's pretty light. After it dries, it usually pulls right out. So you should be good to go. And I hope you guys can see already the beauty. Okay, I'll see you in about an hour. Okay, here we go, and we're going to hit the second coat now. It's looking very exotic and very good. I do like it. It's a little bit of a deviation than I planned on, but sometimes that happens. So let me get you kind of lower here, and I'm going to hit this edges. I apologize for the last one. I didn't get you guys in where you could really see what I was doing. But what I like to do first is start my edging first. And like I said in the last video, I do that because it's usually the most neglected. Inside the monkey grip, of course. And then, once that is done, we start with the body. And I hold this at an angle. And this is, if you ever watch the Stu Mac channel there, I do the same thing. And that's really what gave me the idea of the handle. It just makes working with the guitar so much easier. And I simply just, there's a screw that goes through the back into this little handle that I made, and that's it. So we start spraying top to bottom. A little heavier than last time. Overlapping. My distance varies depending on how it's laying. And you can be unidirectional. The only time I'm not unidirectional is on my last coat. Then we turn it over and we get the back. I'm going to be a little lighter in the areas that are angled, because we don't want any runs or sags. So. Lacquer will change the tone of the guitar too. Also changes the tone of drums, usually for the positive. So. So this is my standard routine in conditioning a fretboard. I use coconut oil. I find coconut oil is far superior to lemon oil, and I just put a dab on each block and rub it in. Sometimes I just use my fingers and then wipe it off with a paper towel or a microfiber towel, whatever you have. And what it'll do also is clean the fretboard. It'll take off any black residues or anything that's left over from fret polishing or anything like that. And it just conditions. It's a very good conditioner. It lasts a long time. It really nourishes the wood, and it makes a huge difference in playability when you're done also. So coconut oil is something that's been used for a good many years, but yet a lot of people don't know about it. Your lemon oils don't really last that long. Coconut oil seems to penetrate deeper and last longer without ruining the wood, and that's what we need. And here is a peek at just how amazing the fretboard looks when it is conditioned with coconut oil, and it really makes the abalone pop also. Just look at that glimmer in that inlay. Very beautiful, very effective, and it's always my go-to. It's the only thing that I'll use personally. There's that beautiful headstock. And you can see the vine itself, the center of the vine, actually pops now, as well as the edge of the fretboard. And now here is just a quick installation of the truss rod cover. I simply eyeball this and line it up. This is Ibanez's new truss rod cover, and it's a quick release. It slides open so you have easy access to the truss rod without having to remove any screws or removing strings or anything. So you can adjust your truss rod very simply and very easily when you need to. I think it's one of the best inventions that they had. And this is the tuner installation, a quick tuner installation, pretty standard. I just use my
method of lining up the holes using a sheetrock screw to start a little pilot, and then using the screws that come with it. I will tell you, be careful of gold screws. They have a tendency of being weaker with these kits, so make sure if you do this, if you got gold hardware, gold screws, I suggest drilling it instead of using the method that I normally use, which is the sheetrock method. But I did end up drilling these a bit because the maple on this neck was so hard. So I don't think I show it, but what I did was simply use the sheetrock screw to mark the holes to make a little dimple, and then went back through and drilled each one individually, put the machine heads back in, screwed them in, tightened them all up, made sure they were all straight, and kept using my straight edge to make sure, and they turned out perfect. Each hole was drilled for the machine heads from the factory. The holes for the machine heads were drilled perfectly, so as long as my holes were straight, we ended up good. I think there's a end result coming up here shortly where you can see exactly what I did, but yeah, I'm gonna
still at it. Long day. Just got the body finished. There's so many coats of lacquer on this, I forget exactly how many there is, but is it ever lacquered? It's beautiful. It's like glass. We have it shielded on the inside, and we're going to start putting this thing together a little bit tonight. And then I'm going to go to bed and call it quits. Been a long day. Been working on a customer's Les Paul. Been building a Stevie Ray Vaughan clone, and amongst other things. Been a long day, but let's start assembling this thing. And the first thing we're going to do is put the bosses in the Trem cavity. Get that going here. Hardware is going to really pop in this color. And what this is actually a black urethane stain that I lacquered over afterwards. And it was actually quite difficult because this particular urethane had a tendency to blush. So I was doing a lot of catching up and touching up with it because of the blushing, but we finally got it. So, all right, brass hammer. Nice and flush. I'm gonna grab a different socket here. I use a socket. They seem to work fantastic. There we go. Nice and flush with the body. And the next one. There we are. And that's all that is. You just take your time. And we can insert these so we don't lose them. Simply start it at an angle. Try to keep it straight.
Here is I use sheetrock screws to pilot my holes for my claw screws, and I just start them by hand, crank them in, undo it, and I use two of them, one on each side, and then I can make sure it's going to be at the right angles, pull them out, and then it works perfectly. Beautiful every time. So sheetrock screws work great.
Same thing, grab another one so I keep these around. pressure, push. I apologize if I'm waving the camera. It's touching the table, I think. So now that that's on, we can actually install our trem, which is right here. And this will sit right in here. And it is a wedge system. It sits in the wedge. And what I like to do that. I'm going to flip this over like so. Block just like this. We'll start our center one first. Boom. Boom. This is just getting everything held in place. Oh, let's do it. There we are. Now our trem is in place. Very cool. So let's slide out on you. Trem is in place. So we can adjust our pressure so it's even. There we go. Okay. Now we can install the neck. First we have to find our neck pieces, which are right here. Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to turn this over like so. Install the beveled end. Beveled end in. The holes. And remember, this has been lacquered, so these are just a type of grommet washer. Okay, just like that.
So what I'm doing right here is just positioning the pickguard to get it in the exact proper position so it looks proper on the horn. And this pickguard fits extremely well, and out of the 3 guitars that we're going to be doing the comparison to, this is definitely the best quality pickguard that comes with the kits. And now I'm inserting the gold screws. It's easier to do this with a good screwdriver rather than drill it out, because the basswood is a softer wood. They screw in really easy. So we're speeding up this process, as you can see, just to show you. We're just screwing them all in, and then we're going to move on to stringing up the guitar here shortly, which is a cool process with the Ibanez, because you string the guitars from the top down. No need to go through all of the rigmarole that a lot of people think you need to do. So I believe we're going to start stringing it right now, as a matter of fact. So right now I'm peeling off the plastic to the pickguard. And comes off. There's 2 layers, just so you know. 2 layers. Usually on all pickguards there's 2 layers. I've seen actually 3 layers on some, but this is 2 layers. Like I said, the pearl on this pickguard and the way it's cut is absolutely magnificent. This guitar's turning out beautiful, as you can tell. So we're stringing right now, and we run it right through the top of the tuner and leave the balls on. Let the balls rest right up against the tuning machine. And there's you'll see as we go farther how I pull the strings down, pull them all down to one side, and make one cut, and they're all the proper length to go into the tremolo bridge. Really cool setup. I learned this watching Steve Vai's Guitar Tech. Very cool. So once all the strings are ran through the tuning machine, simply pull them down over towards you. And what I'm doing right now, I believe, I can't see what I'm doing right now actually. I think I'm just loosening up the where the strings go in to make sure I'm going to have room to put the strings in. And you see where I have them pinched off right there. So I'm going to pull them down to one length over to one side, just past. And you'll see I'm pointing to the area just past where they go in, and I'm going to make one single cut with the wire cutters, with my side cutters, and they'll all be the proper length. And here's that right now. Now they're all ready to insert, and they're all the correct length with the minimal winds on the tuning machines. Very cool trick, very fast, very easy, very efficient. So I just take each one of these strings, put it in its corresponding hole, tighten them up, going down through, trying to speed up the camera for you here. And the tool that I use, you can use a 9-volt battery. A 9-volt battery seems to be the perfect spacing. I got a little kind of a tool that I made out of an old charging block that works good for different tremolo systems. So as you can see, I'm just tightening down the strings into the bridge, and when we get done, I'm just going to take my tuning machine winder and start tightening them down, and then you'll see that the little block that I put under the tremolo bar, or the tremolo bridge, will almost fall right out. And then you tune it up. You find your balance point in the back for your claw, and you tune it up so your bridge is about level. Steve Vai runs his at a little bit of an angle to get that 2-inch from the. There we are. Winding them up. Let's see, I just put some pressure on them, line them up, And very minimal lines too, by the way. You don't have a lot of wrapping going on. And that's really the point of this, is not to have a lot of lines. It maintains tuning stability that way. The ball of the string does all the work. So very, very cool. But another thing, like I said, Steve Vai has his bridge set at a slight angle, so his whammy bar is exactly 2 inches from the pickguard in the air. That's his preferred method, so that's kind of how I set these up too. Although this one I set up, well, almost perfectly flat, because I found a real sweet spot and it seemed to stay in tune, so that's why I did it that way. Okay, that is done. It's in tune. It's holding tune. And those slinkies really make a big difference. So, we got it. The action is absolutely sheer perfection on this right now. Of course, the strings do have to break in. The whammy bar does sit a touch high, but that is okay. There's 0 fret buzz anywhere. This is the best guitar out of the box so far. Hopefully it plays just as good. Beautiful, beautiful guitar. Sure, our wedge is proper. The bridge is nice, floating properly. Actually, it's a little too far down if you want to be technical, but I'm very pleased with this. Now, gonna need a little bit of tuning, but overall, very nice, very cool. It is time to start wiring. And before we start, I want to make clear the video I did last night, assembling this, probably doing a voiceover for that. You've probably heard it by now, of course you have. I want to say that this guitar is set up beautifully. It's actually astonishing, the setup on this guitar and how perfect, and I mean perfect, the action is. It's just amazing. And of course I use the Cobalt Slinkies 9-42, be used on all of these. We don't know how this is going to sound yet, but playability, putting it in your hands and playing it, let's just say it's fantastic. And let's get started. Flip it over, we'll start wiring this thing up. And of course, last night, still got compound on this thing I gotta get off. Last night we wired this, or put the pickguard on, or the cavity cover, what I mean. I've removed the film off the pickguard, but I haven't removed the film off of these yet. And we'll do that in a second. But all our holes are tapped out. The Trem is set up correctly. And we'll see how this is going to work and how the sustain is. There. And here's our input jack. The input jack is identical to the one on the BYO kit, at least it appears to be. So I believe it's these two wires here that get soldered to. And check, make sure. Now, just so you know, most of the time when you get these guys, there's 2 layers of film on everything. 2 layers. Sometimes you really got to get in there with your fingernails. The BYO kit had none on the pickguard. Everywhere else, but none on the pickguard. Which kind of blew me away. So there's one layer. I can tell that there's another layer underneath. So they double film it, which is pretty cool. So we'll take off the other layer afterwards, but there's our first layer. And we'll pull this off, and this fit really well. There we are. That was it. There we go. Okay. So here's our wires. And what we want to do. This is important. So when you go to put this together, and you pull your nut off your jack, and you go to put that together, you want to make sure, well, number one, that the rubber is up here. You want to make sure you run this on your wires first, where you have nothing to screw it to when you get done. So make sure you do that. And then here is our other one, which we're going to be soldering right to the claw. Okay. Now, there's my solder. I think it's time to get some new. I'm getting low. And I'm going to find a place to solder this. Just a touch. Make sure you get it. It tells me it's going to hold. I put a little bit on the wire, like so. And we should be able to go down and just simply attach it. Yes. And that's that. That is grounded. And then I can take my ground wire and move it neatly out of the way wherever we decide to put it. I think that's going to be pretty good right there. So we got a good soldered connection right there. Nothing coming loose. That's important. And then we're going to solder our jack. But I'm going to grab a drink real quick here. I'll be right back.
Okay. Dry mouth. Early in the morning. Okay, let's get started here. So here's our jack. And you'll notice you have a tall part here. This isn't used on a 2-wire system. So what you're going to do is on the right, at least usually they're like this, on the right is your ground of your lower two. You're looking at it like this. This would be your ground on the right, and to your left would be your signal. So that's how we're going to do it. Hopefully that's correct with this one, but that's usually how they are. And once again, what I'm going to do, we'll wire up the signal wire first. And I just want to take a little bit of solder and just coat the wires real quick. That just helps a little bit. And I don't want to have a big thing to work with here, so let's just take that out that much. And try to work with this here if I can. Sometimes what I like to do, and I'm probably gonna do it, is to stabilize it. There we are. Okay, so now we have our jack. Everything should be nice and stable. There's our ground. So we can run our jack in now and through the shielding. Make sure we get our nut up there. And now we're going to test and make sure this is going to work. I'll do a quick test. You're not going to hear it yet because that's going to be for the finale at the end of the builds, but you can see she's all wired up in there. That's just how it's going to be. Let's test it, and I'll be right back. So we have trouble in paradise. I am kind of baffled right now. It just does not work. It was working, but it wasn't working properly. The bridge pickup was not functioning at all. Okay, so total transparency. The wiring from the factory was wrong. This is looking messy right now because I had to get it right, but now we have everything working. But they had it. It wasn't even like their diagram. It wasn't wired like their own diagram, but now we got it. And there is our bridge. Splitting coils properly now. Everything's working now. Okay, so finally, so we're gonna unplug this and we'll get this together. And yeah, that was not fun. It's never fun when it's not plug and play. But all the components did work, so that's good. We just had to do a little rewiring, and I'm not tucking everything up in neat yet, simply because in case I got to get back in here. I don't think that I will, but yeah, the way they had it wired, so let's make it clear, it did play, but it was playing through every pickup in every switch position except for the last two, and then it was just dead. So that was the problem. It was just wired wrong. If you know your wiring, then just look up a schematic. I just looked up their own schematics and found somebody just didn't wire it properly. But now we got it wired properly. So let me get some screws. Great looking. That's a great looking guitar right there. Look at this thing. Just fantastic. Just amazing. Beautiful. Okay. We'll step back and get a good look at it, and then we'll move on to the other episodes soon. We'll do sound tests,
between all three. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching Fulton Street Beats. Don't forget to hit that like button, share, and subscribe. Make sure you stay tuned right now for some small video and some up-close pics of the build. Thanks, guys. Bye.